Thank you, Kevin, for that report. We want to get into our conversation this evening. As I was telling you, 21 people dead, scores others injured in that terror attack at the 14 Riverside Drive last week, Tuesday. We want to get to know perhaps just some of the events, circumstances, information that could have been in the custody of the security services prior to this. But of course, what the security experts as well make of the events since the attack, the developments as well that we have seen so far. So joining me in studio for that conversation, I have with me on my immediate right, we have security expert and consultant Byron Adera, who is a former Special Forces officer. In the middle, the government spokesperson, Eric Kiraithe. We also have with us tonight Director, Center for Security Studies, Simiu Werunga. Asanteni Sana. Welcome to Checkpoint. I'll begin with you, Mr. Werunga, on just what your thoughts are of how the operation was handled by the security services.
I think this time we need to be very honest to ourselves. They were fairly professional, fairly organized. The command took charge of the operation. There was very little interference from non-actors in that operation. Then I mean non-actors is the people from the central government. And therefore the police, the military were given a leeway to take charge of the operation, and they did a fantastic job compared to what we've seen around before. This, I think, from what I've read even around Africa, to me, my assessment, this was a fairly organized operation, and I think that is why it took us a very short time for us to deal with the situation and call it quits. So it was a fairly professional undertaking. And when you notice, nobody even realized when the military special forces went in, because we started with the normal police, GSU in Red Berets. We had the special forces from commandos from Reke Squad, and then the military shooed in together, and by the time they were walking out, the operation was over. That was extremely good.
Definitely a huge departure from what we witnessed, Byron, with the Westgate attack. There were quite a number of missteps in that incident, in that instance with the attack. However, at the end of the day, people died. This should not have happened. So as the officers and the services are hailed, somebody still dropped the ball in as far perhaps as intelligence is concerned, would you say?
Yes. I mean, like, I'd share the same sentiments that have been voiced by my good friend, Mr. Simiu Werunga. The operation was fairly well organized and coordinated in such a manner that basically ended up adding a lot of impetus to the whole thing. Yes, we have failed forward very well as a country. Psychologists attribute this to partial learning by avoidance regulatory orientation, which is obviously people looking at success from the point of departure or taking off a point of understanding that getting hurt more would be a lot more expensive than treating ourselves to nice things as we see success should actually be. So I'd attribute this to a lot of course, thoroughness in understanding of the tactical situations at all times. We had a lot better coordination between several. Of course, we understand the whole outlay of things was a multi-agency approach to things, and there's always the inherent challenges in terms of interdependencies between everybody, all the moving parts. So all these were probably properly managed in terms of report lines, in terms of sharing information intelligence, which are actionable as such. And you can attribute this to even the support of the other, auxiliary parts of the general public. I'll take the bit about social media with a pinch of salt and a bag of rice. This is some space that's been misused, perhaps in different skills. But I'm happy with the way even the sharing of exacting intelligence with, even to the extent that we had free flow of information to the actors themselves, the action teams and the assault teams that went in, knew exactly where they want to go and what they want to do.
All right, let me bring this to the government spokesperson, because once all of these things are being said about the security services, and you cannot take away from how the operation was handled and the praise. But someone who lost a loved one, family member, a friend, sits back and asks, I don't see success, I don't see this as it's being described. So the question to you would be, was there intelligence? Did the government, the security services, know about an impending attack? Can you talk to us about that, sir?
What I would want to make very clear, Sophia, and Let me start like every other honest person anywhere on the globe. That our security services did things right and did the right things. This is evidence of a system that has evolved, that has taken global best practices in that situation. This is evidence of an outfit which is able to work with the best available tactics on the globe today. I can't tell you that the response to that attack could have been any better in New York or even London. I have interacted widely with security services all over the world, and the most important thing is that we must thank our officers profusely and give them every support from every level.
And I get that. My question is,
that said,
yes,
I am asking myself, how should Sophia look at it? It is bad and painful. Actually, I've been quiet throughout, and everybody in government has been quiet. There is a time that comes when the government has to listen, the government has to look, the government has to analyze, the government has to act and talk less. I can tell you that from the government perspective, our intelligence is perfect. Our interagency communication between intelligence, preventive activities, and response activities, I won't repeat perfect. It can be improved, but I think
because
it
with
is,
due respect,
it
perfect,
is the
people
best,
died here.
It is
so
the
if the
best
intelligence was perfect, they would have known there's an attack and would have averted it. But to the question, was there intelligence on this one, sir? So that you can move along.
Let me take you to the next level, because I must teach you to think like a security person. What we need to be asking ourselves as a country is, where is our lowest vulnerability? In respect of every crime in the world, nobody has eliminated all the risks. But there is a level at which you can mitigate the risk using intelligence, using response, using preventive activities. And I think it is common knowledge where our vulnerabilities are. The ease with which criminals, radicalized terrorists, are able to seep into our society, embed themselves, and operate with freedom can stretch any system wherever.
May I put my question
so
differently, sir? With an example, because you talk about our weak areas are known. Is it, for instance, let me give you an example. Maher Khalid, who was a suicide bomber, he was already wanted for other attacks, okay? But he was able to enter the country, go about his business freely, and is a suicide bomber in this incident. Isn't that a glaring, blatant failure of the security agencies? I am listening, but I'm also giving you facts.
I am not going to give you a no or a yes. You are asking for a composition where we require this is. What I'm telling you is that the ease with which criminals are able to move among us. A lot of security analysts, and I'm sure Werunga will take you a little bit through this, have talked about community policing. They have talked about Nyumba Kumi. If we leave viruses to move freely and bacteria to move freely in your kitchen, the best doctors will not assure your health. Having said that, the government has taken also that as a challenge. And I can tell you, everybody, the President of the Republic, the Interior Minister, the Inspector General, with support from even KDF and everybody, we are looking at how we are going to improve this so that it is much less easier for a criminal of any description to embed himself into our society. And where we are talking about a huge awareness and sensitivity about our human rights.
All right.
We are over-investing and over-emphasizing on protective security. You know, bodyguards, barriers, burglar-proof, firearms. That is not the point. When you look at societies which have succeeded to eject terrorists from amongst themselves, because Gichunge was not operating in Somalia. Maybe Khaled came from Somalia. Kemunto was not operating from Somalia.
All right.
What we need to ask ourselves is that right from the citizen to the judiciary, how easy it is for a criminal to operate in Kenya.
And I'll come back to you, sir.
Can the government alone solve that problem?
All right. Let me come to Mr. Werunga, because he has mentioned about, where this terrorists could have been coming from, and the homegrown nature of what we're witnessing now, because they were all Kenyans, at least the ones who were at the Riverside Drive, 14 Riverside. As you respond first to the question of intelligence, and if you see that as where the ball was dropped in this instance, talk to us about the face of terror today as we saw it. Is it morphing?
I think one, Sophia, you're asking us a very difficult question, whether there was a failure on the part of intelligence or we didn't do it right. And for those of us who do a lot of this comparative analysis, you'll find that every time a country puts its house in order, there's always a slippage, always a slippage. And I think this is what happened with Westgate. But let me also tell you this. From what we are hearing, if the security forces had not gone to District 2 on time, because the idea was this guy goes, blows up himself, then as people are running towards the gate, these 4 guys with this 1,000 bullets were supposed to wait for them. So I think, yes, we agree there was a lapse, not because we are not good, but because they are assumed he might not share with you so many attempts that at least 1 or 2, Sophia, will slip through this. But what is important, that even as they slip through, how prepared are we as a country? And comparatively, 2013, Garissa University, I can tell you for a fact, we have done tremendously well. Yes, people have lost their lives. But don't forget, when they slip through this ring of intelligence, they are always ahead of our security services. So by the time you get to the area, they have already caused some damage. And unfortunately, it doesn't want to come up open. Our demography is a problem. And I think as a country, we must now accept, I've said this thing many times, our demography is complicated. You will not know whether I'm Simiyu from Uganda or Simiyu a Kenyan, because we have Simiyus in Uganda. And when you have that kind of scenario, it becomes very difficult even for our own people to engage and say, these are the people we are dealing with as homegrown. You see, the idea is homegrown. How many people in this country have IDs, passports, and yet we know they came to this country at the age of 7, the age of 5, the age of 10. So it becomes a problem even as we're trying to classify terror that we are dealing with, whether it is homegrown or it is transported. That complicates the issue of how our people can deal with it. So to me, yes, we've lost lives, but I think it could have been worse had our people, our security forces not entered that place on time. To me, I think let's look at it as a country. What was the response? And if they had not done it, and what we are hearing these guys wanted to do, what will have been the damage?
All right.
So yes, we agree there was a slip, it happened. But Sophia, every country, even the US, with the best in the world, they still do it. Even Britain, with the best in the world,
they still
do it. So I think what we need to look at, are we better than what we were last time? And I think I can tell you this time, we were much, much better than what it was. So what was your second question?
I will come back to that, because I want, as you've talked about, we are better, we've done better. But Adara, I wonder if you see it that way. And what needs to be done better, as Werunga is speaking to. And touch on the borders for us, because we've seen Khalid entered the country. One of the others as well just got back literally a few days to this attack. So there's that almost in and out by these kind of individuals. We've had that conversation many times, especially around post an attack. So it looks like we talk about it, then forget it and not fix the problem.
Yeah, quite clearly, it looks as if we are unprepared with regards to so many things. First of all, we're thinking the immigration regimes that are intended to support the free flow of human beings in and out of the country. So in terms of cross-border movements, that is one. But the second point I'd want to probably bring to light is I share in the same kind of sentiments that Simiyu Werunga has addressed himself to. Perhaps we'd have seen more carnage if the intent and the organizational kind of structure around this attack was 100% carried out as it was intended, in the sense that our level of awareness and preparedness could be wanting, and this is particularly on the part of the citizenry, who by and large, I feel, and I strongly have this sentiment, driven home, that are stuck in the mud with a lot of awareness issues. We've heard of how much, Gishunge lived among us. They'd visit restaurants, they'd visit all normal places where everybody goes to. And no one seems to have realized. Of course, I understand how much, even where he lived among his neighbors, people talked about how much abnormal he looked and sounded. And then how much this information didn't get to the right place at the right time. So this is all about intelligence, yes, but it's not slip up on many parts. It's slip up on the few parts that are very critical in the intelligence cycle, and where you have the general public. So the popular intelligence. And the truth be said, we may invest in the best of intelligence, and we have the best of equipment in town, and we have the best of people around the execution of the exacting intelligence supported by the government agencies. But we, the people that should be absolutely patriotic and behind the good that is done towards achieving these goals by the government, are not doing the right thing. So the national will, which is the sum total of the whole orientation and people's feelings around government projects. So let's assume this is a project. We may be lacking out in total support. And this is a bad culture that sadly Kenyans are reeling in. We do not have that active situational awareness, which is, carry out our duties a lot of forethought, carry out our duties a lot of thoroughness in planning, and then, of course, have a moderate sense of vigilance.
Gentlemen, stay with me. We must take a break. We'll go back to the question around the porous border, and definitely spokesperson allow you to comment, because we also had a conversation from government about building a wall. In the US, it's a big Trump issue now. So we'll get to hear from you on what needs to happen, because that's a serious problem. I think we can all agree. Stay with us right here on Checkpoint. We'll be right back.